Hello, today we have a reading from Pirkei Avos by the Maharal. Let's take a Pirkei Avos by the Maharal of Prague. A commentary based on selections from Maharal's Derech Chaim. Let's take a look at it. Here, this is the Hebrew, and we can learn from the English here. It's better to learn from the Hebrew, but first we can learn from the English. Exile yourself to a place of Torah, and do not assume that it will come after you. Heavy gola lemakom Torah v'al ta'omar shehi tavo acharecha. Exile yourself to a place of Torah, and do not assume that it will come after you. The only way to acquire Torah is to pursue it. Torah knowledge in its full depth is elusive, for it transcends human qualities and abilities. It goes without saying that Torah will not come on its own. In other words, one has to strive after it. So, V'al ta'omar shehi tavo acharecha, and do not assume that it will come after you. Some things in life may indeed come after you. Wealth, for instance, comes by divine decree. Since God has decreed wealth for a person, it truly will pursue him as events unfold in such a way that the decree can come to fruition. For example, he could simply find a valuable object and become wealthy without effort. Shabbos 147b. Torah is different. Torah can be acquired only through personal effort, as the rabbi said. Shabbos 147b. Oh, that's what the note is, as the rabbi said. Torah is different. Torah can be acquired only through personal effort, as the rabbi said. If a person says, I labored, but I did not succeed, do not believe it. If one says, I succeeded without labor, do not believe it. If one says, I labored and I succeeded, believe it. These words apply to Torah. But business succeeds by divine assistance. Shechavercha yikaimuha biyadecha. For it is your colleagues who will cause it to remain with you. This expression explains why you should not say that it will come after you. Do not think that you can study on your own and rely on your own colleagues who did study in a place of Torah to clarify points of uncertainty for you. In other words, you have to really strive on your own. Don't think that your colleagues that learn Torah will clarify it with you. Furthermore, we must go to the teacher in keeping with the principle that, quote, it will not come after you. If we rely on our colleagues, who may indeed come to us, we will not have established the proper context for Torah study. According to this explanation, it is not necessary to exile oneself to another city if there is a Torah teacher, Rav, in his own city. The point is that he must go to the Rav and not expect the Rav to come to him. Oh, he has to go to the Rav. Don't expect he's going to come to you. V'el binasecha al tishain, and do not rely on your own and understanding. Continuing along this line of explanation, that this phrase means that Torah must be learned from a Rav, from a teacher of Torah. The wisdom of Torah is beyond anyone's ability to discover on the strength of his own unaided understanding. A second approach, an alternative explanation of the Mishnah, is based on an incident recited by the rabbis. That's Shabbos 147b. Let's see what that is. Let's see. Rabbi Chelbo said, indulgence in the pleasures of the wine of Perugia and the bathing water of Dimyosis cut off the 10 tribes from Israel. Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach visited there, Perugia and Diomsis. and was drawn after them, the wine and the bathing water. His Torah learning was uprooted from him. When he returned, he got up to read from the scroll of the Torah. He should have read, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem. HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem. This month is for you. The beginning of months is for you. He said instead, HaChoresh Hoya Libam. HaChoresh Hoya Libam. Their heart was deaf. So it's a very similar spelling, but he changed the resh for the dalid, and the beis for the chaf. HaChoresh Hoya Libam. And so, in other words, their heart was deaf. Instead of this month is for you, he said their heart was deaf. The rabbis prayed for him, and his Torah learning returned. This is what we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Nahorai says, exile yourself to a place of Torah, and do not assume that it will come after you, for it is your colleagues who will cause it to remain with you, and do not rely on your own understanding. In other words, when one person is talking to another person, so they're both trying to learn the Torah, so they strengthen the resolve within each other to learn, and that they help each other to learn. So that's what it means. Your colleagues will help you. We learned his name was not Rabbi Nahorai, but Rabbi Nehemiah, and some say his name was Rabbi Elazar ben Arech. Why then was he called Rabbi Nahorai? Because he enlightened the eyes of the rabbis in Torah law. The wine and the water were indulgences in worldly pleasures. One who lives in a place that is devoid of Torah will be drawn after such pleasures, and his Torah will leave him. As happened even to the great Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. From this incident we see that the importance of going to a place of Torah is not just to learn from a rabbi, but to live in an environment that is imbued with Torah. We may now explain the Mishnah as follows. Hevigola lemkom Torah, and exile yourself to a place of Torah. Go to a place where the environment is infused with Torah, and where you will not be drawn after worldly matters. And do not assume that it will come after you. Torah will not follow one who indulges in life's pleasures. And do not assume it is your colleagues who will cause it to remain with you. Do not think that studying with your colleagues will protect you from forgetting your studies. And do not rely on your own understanding. One cannot rely on one's own intellectual strength to keep him away from ephemeral physical pleasures. We are physical beings, and hence we will be drawn after worldly matters unless we are in an environment that is saturated with Torah. So that's what it says. So this is the Pirkei Avos, or the Maharal of Prague. Pirkei Avos. Okay, thank you. Take care.